every single day. All right, take your Bibles. It's Philippians chapter 3. We're going to dive in here this morning. I want to help you. In these studies I've researched, I'll allude to some of them. It honestly, it scared me what control this has on people. Not just the phone, not just the TV, not just computer, but all revolving around technology. How much control, I'm going to set that here, how much control this thing has over us. As a matter of fact, I'll read this study later. There's a study out there that alludes to a higher depression rate because of technology. And I'll go to different studies. I prove all that and show you these studies that are not Christian studies, but it is very true. There is a high desire and a high need to feel accepted since Facebook, since Twitter, and we always got to scroll through and see what anybody else is doing. Let me ask you, for those who use Facebook, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be very personal with it, okay? How many of you have ever gone on there a little jealous of what someone else had or what someone else did? Anyone? Okay, me, I have, right? Yeah, we get on there, and those who won't raise their hand, you do too, stop it. If you're on Facebook, there are times you look through and you're like, be honest, because we're human. We do that. Let's just be very real. God's not going to change you if you're not willing to change and be honest about it, right? We do that. We want more because of our human nature. Now, in Philippians chapter 3, I don't have time to get into all of this story like I normally would with a chapter before we preach it. I'm going to encourage you to go through chapter 3 and understand the context. Are we good with this? Are we set? All right. And in these verses we read today, we find Paul was writing this book from prison. Paul expresses his comfort in Jesus' life and death. Just like Jesus emptied himself, Paul was teaching the church in Philippi, I need to empty myself. We come to chapter 3, and Paul is warning them against false teachers, false prophets, people who would come in and dissuade you and turn your attention. Now, technology is not necessarily a false prophet or a false teacher. We'll get to that here in a little bit. But it can be used for things that would not glorify and honor the Lord. So we get here, Paul's warning them about losing their joy in Jesus. Friend, I'm going to say this. A lot of our joy is wrapped up in technology. I'm going to say that in the forefront because we'll get to that and I'll explain that meaning. Technology has a hold not only on the world, but also on the church. Our emotions many times are led by technology. Say, Pastor, what do you mean? Well, I'll prove in a little bit. Studies, if we get to them all, studies that dictate how our emotions change based on what we see and what we feel. But I'll prove it just in a simple point. You watch the news for any amount of time, and your joy goes from here to here. It's non-existent, right? Because it's discouraging. Technology does cause issues. I hope you'd at least admit that with me. You may not agree with everything I say today. That's fine. But I want you to at least warn you. Warn you. So Paul comes down here to verse 10. Look here with me. Verse 10 of chapter 3. That I may know Him. Who's the Him? Jesus, and the power of His resurrection. Paul wanted to know Jesus, not just historical facts about Him, not just some of His miracles, not just His morality. He wanted to recognize who Jesus was, what Jesus was all about, and he wanted to identify with Him. You want to know everything about Him. Too many people today want to know some cute things about Jesus, want to know He spit on the ground and used some of that mud and healed a guy who was blind. Oh, that's cute. We can relate to that. That's kind of cool. But they don't want to know Jesus. Jesus, earlier on in the book, emptied Himself of all the glories of heaven, of all the respect that He had there, and He came to this earth and they made fun of Him and mocked Him. If you really want to be like Jesus, your pride's going to be out the window. Any type of pride was not found in Jesus. So any type of pride in our life, and we're going to see how technology is prideful. We'll look at that here in a little bit. Look what he goes on to say in verse 11. If by any means I might attain unto the resurrection of the dead. He understood he had a lot of work to do. Look at verse 12. Not that as though I had already attained, either were already perfect. Paul understood he had a long way to go in his walk with the Lord. And friend, if you and I were honest today, I don't care how long you've been saved. I don't care how many times you read the Bible. I don't care about all those things. What I want you to agree with me here this morning, we've got a long way to go in our walk with the Lord. Can we all agree with that? We've all got some work to do in our walk with the Lord. And this is not I'm yelling at you. This is all of us in this room, front to the back. We all have a long way to go in our walk with the Lord. But the difference with Paul and us is Paul knew it and we don't. Oh, we would say to everyone, yeah, I've got a lot of work to do. I got this area and this area and this area. But we're not doing anything about it. Paul was. Paul genuinely cared about Christ and about being more like Christ. I fear the church has tried to fit in. I'm talking the church as a whole. The body of believers in the world today, we're trying to fit in. We're just trying to survive. And Paul says, that's not me. I'm getting to know Him. I want to know what He did. I want to live like Him. I want to serve Him. I want my life to be about Him. But there's something that hinders that for us. And I believe one of the greatest culprits is technology. I believe our time on our phone, our time on TV, our time on the internet, our time on all these different things that control us, I believe they are hindering. When I started this study a long time ago, I think it was a year and a half, I don't remember exactly. I pulled up some notes that I had written out a long time ago when I was going to do this series. And this is one of the things several months ago I knew was causing issues. Because it causes issues for all of us. So a couple questions. Is technology evolving faster than society can handle? I'd say yes. Is it ruining and or controlling our lives? I'd say yes. I also want to say this. The church is unable to compete with the stimulation of a phone, iPad, or computer. You see, when you turn, we're not going to get into all of this, but there's something that happens with your brain when the lights and how they stimulate your eyes and your mind when you turn a device on. I can't compete with that. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a book and I'm going to tell you about Christ. And I'm going to teach you what's in this book. And it's not stimulating, it's not exciting, it's not always fun, it's not always interesting as you would like to with a technological device. We try to do a few things with different technology just to try to keep us engaged. And sometimes we'll have slides, but you see, we're always, but can we compete with the rest of it? No. No. That's why most people, when there's a church service going on around the world, or at least let's say in America, most people have a TV on today. Most people don't really care about the church, don't really care about growing in their walk with the Lord. As long as they get their shows and their TVs and their movies, as long as they get that, I think I think technology, the church can't compete that. Addiction to phones or technology, listen closely. Although it's appealing, it will never bring fulfillment. If you are struggling and you need that phone, they say the average human being in the United States looks at their phone 144 times a day to check it. 144 times on average, some people a lot more. I think the average is down because there are certain people who have a phone and they leave it at their bedside and never touch it. There's a few of you in here are like that. You could care less about the dumb thing. But for the most part, people look at their phone tons and tons and tons and tons of times each day. I think it has a hold on us. Do I think is Satan pretty smart? Do you think Satan knows what he's doing? He's hiding behind the guise of something that is innocent, and he changes it and makes it wicked. Would y'all agree with me? Okay. Now, with that being said, 1982, they said, was the year of the computer. Now, I grew up, and we had computers, and we had all that stuff. Some of you, maybe that you were there when it kind of got going, got rolling. Year of the computer. I think it was in the digital age gets going. I don't know, was it in 2007 that Steve Jobs shows or brings the new iPhone. I think it was in 2007. And it seems like in the 2000s, I was still a young man, and as we got into 2010 and 2011, and I'm in Bible college, and I'm growing, and I'm doing these things, it just seems like now, as I'm in college, the world is shifting, and now the phones are starting to come in. When I started Bible college, all I had was a flip phone. And I thought it was cool because my parents, I didn't have phones when I was growing up, never had one. My parents' rule was, when you can pay for it and you can control yourself with it, you can have one. I couldn't pay for it till I went to Bible college. Eventually, I got a little flip phone. First couple of years, I had that flip phone. And then I had one of those that slides up. The slide up one that comes back and forth, and I thought that was really cool. And then eventually I would get the iPhone, and I would think that was really cool. And then as I graduated college, my senior year, I remember my friends. He was a Green Bay Packer fan. I was a Green Bay Packer fan. He could have internet on his phone. I was like, no way. I thought it was the coolest thing. We could watch the football game from his phone. So guess what we were doing as Bible college students training to be pastors in the service? It was a big church. You could hide. There were thousands of people in there. We had to check the scores, all right? Don't you do that in here because I can see you. I can see all of you. It's a small enough church. We have cameras too. I'll be watching. But man, it's so exciting. And eventually it went even farther. And some of you say, Pastor, that's nothing. But I just remember seeing how quickly it started to spiral out of control. And then I became a senior, and I think junior year I was on dorm staff, and I started to have to do dorm checks and make sure there was a lights out time on our college, and you weren't supposed to be out and about unless you had special permission. Unless you were working a job, you're supposed to be in your room. They didn't want any funny business going on. And I would have to walk to the rooms, and I would have to go and make sure everybody was in their rooms and was where they needed to be. I remember some rooms, you'd walk in and everyone was on a device. We're talking Bible college students studying for ministry. Some devices, we would catch people doing some things they shouldn't, and because they wouldn't stop and give it up, there were some kids that were kicked out of college. There were things that they were looking at they had no business looking at. There were some addictions. They wouldn't go to class because of a certain game that came out. They wouldn't go to class, and they would be kicked out of college. They would give up God's will because they had a video game. I watched this one student, he got in some trouble because he was looking at stuff he shouldn't have looked at, and it led him to do something he shouldn't have done, and he was going to be expelled the next day. His parents were coming to get him. And he had to come that night because I was on dorm staff. They had him come, and he came to my room and just cried, saying, I failed God. I knew God wants me to do this, but I failed him. Crying there. I don't know what age he was. I think he was a junior, senior in Bible college. He wanted to serve the Lord. He sat there and he cried. He didn't know what he was going to do now. How was he going to be confronted by his parents? His parents had high hopes and ambitions for him. He said, I didn't get this under control, and I knew I shouldn't. And he got into all this. Technology is destroying our country. It's destroying and brainwashing people. I say all of that to get us really thinking how big of a deal this is. I'm using some extreme cases. Now, Paul says, I've not attained, I must press on for the Lord. I understand one day I'll be complete and I'll be perfect, but while I'm here on this earth, I've got a long way to go. I believe many today are struggling with technology. One person said it this way, hours can go by as I satisfy my every curiosity on a device where I am in complete control. I can look up long-lost friends, nothing wrong with that. I have endless supply of laughter from stand-up comedians to cat videos on YouTube. Google produces results for every search I want. Endless entertainment awaits me on Netflix. Amazon will bring me anything I want with a couple taps on a screen. I find myself browsing aimlessly even after responding to a text. How many of you have ever been caught up, you've been busy with something, someone texts you, you look at the text, and then you start browsing? Man, and then hours upon hours are wasted. Am I mad at you? No, that's not what I'm trying to say tonight. I do believe laziness is not something that's talked about enough, and God is not a fan of laziness. Just read the book of Proverbs. And I think sometimes phones get us away from reality. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Let's talk about the benefits of technology very quickly. While I'm talking about this, go to Proverbs, the book of Proverbs chapter 22. Since there were no phones back then, you know, they chiseled on a rock and threw it at each other. That was a text message. No, that's not. They didn't have phones, so they couldn't tell you that a phone was wrong, internet was wrong, a computer was wrong. So we take principles. What are the benefits of technology? Building relationships with those you cannot connect with on a daily basis. I have family and friends outside the state I can connect with. I can call my brother in Africa. We can talk to missionaries. Oh, it's a wonderful thing. The technology, my phone that I carry with me has my calendar. I have alarms that go off. And if I forget to say what the alarm was for, I'll have random alarms going off that I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but I forget what and why. It's our connection with others. It's our source for food deliveries. How many of you have ever had food delivered to your home? Yes, glory be. You know, when you're late at night and you just need a soft taco from Taco Bell. Technology. Your study apps. I study for several hours each sermon, and I use a computer, and I have books, and I'll use all these things so I can study. Oh, it's a benefit. We have quick access to knowledge. If you forget how to spell something, you just type it in real quick, and you look much more intellectual than other people really know the truth. It's your alarm to get up in the morning. It's your books. It's there for you. There are a lot of benefits. But the detriment of technology, I think it keeps us from introspection. We fear more the opinion of people we may never see than we do those who love us closely. We'll reach out and see what other people say, and we'll reach out and do a study of people on Facebook to see what they would do in this situation. We have a lack of connection outside of face-to-face interaction, and I believe there is something that is lacking with people who can be face-to-face and talk with each other. And I believe a big reason for that is technology. Now, I understand there are certain things. People are more shy. People are less extroverted. They're more introverted. But I believe not everyone is like that. And I believe the phones and technology have given us a reason to hide and stay away from people. When God called us to go to the masses, go to the people, we hide behind. I think there's many detriments. There's a Consumer Affairs report that's out there that says each day Americans spend, this is not a Christian source, Americans spend 4 hours and 30 minutes on their mobile phones. 4 hours and 30 minutes on average. Once again, you have people who own phones that only look at them for a text. They don't know how to use them. My dad does not know how to use a phone. My dad, when we talked about Twitter, he thought it was a dirty word. My dad does not know, I'm just kidding, but he doesn't know any of that stuff. He doesn't get that stuff. He doesn't use it. So people have phones like him. He only gets on it to answer a text. We showed him how to use Google. He could type something in a while back and whoa, right? There's some people who don't use it at all, but the average American spends 4 hours and 30 minutes on their phone. 4 hours and 30 minutes. You tell me if you think God is pleased with that. I'm not being confrontational because there are reasons we use our phone. We connect with others on it. I'm for all that. 4 hours and 30 minutes out of a 24-hour day. 4 hours. Wasting our time away. What could we be doing? Something productive. There's a study by Jean, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Twenge, a PhD professor of psychology at San Diego State University. They found, their colleagues did this, that adolescents who spent the most time on social media and the least time in face-to-face social interactions reported the most loneliness. See, some people feel they can hide behind a phone, but in reality, they are trying to escape reality, and they experience more loneliness. Phones are not necessarily helping us. Not necessarily helping us. And she goes on to say, add unrealistic standards for beauty, success, and fame. You know how many people are so angry when they look at themselves and post themselves, and they just want someone to see that they are pretty. They want someone to say it. They are handsome. They are something. We're looking for that on these sources. Where are we supposed to find that? From God. God made me. I'm supposed to be satisfied in what God did, and yet we use technology. They also go on to say limited human interaction. You have a recipe for self-esteem, depression, and a host of other problems. People often have a fear of missing out or comparing their looks, lives, and achievements to what they see online. This can be very damaging. And yet so often we spend so much time caring about the opinions of people that we will never meet. This leads to a lack of sleep and a lack of ability to say no. This came from a Child Mind Institute in 2017. A study of over 500,000 8th through 12th graders found that the number exhibiting high levels of depressive symptoms increased by 33% between 2010 and 2015. In the same period, the suicide rate for girls in that age group increased by 65%. Smartphones were introduced in 2007, and by 2015, fully 92% of teens and young adults owned a smartphone. There is correlation, not just from Christians, but also from the outside world. They see the damaging effects of technology, and yet no one will say anything about it. Paul said, I have not attained perfection. I'm seeking the Lord. I'm walking with Him. I want to know Him better. I want to grow in Him. Paul was not spending 4 hours and 30 minutes on a phone caring about the opinions of others. He cared about what Christ thought of him, and he cared about seeing other people come to Christ. And instead of that, what we're worried about is what someone will say, what somebody will think, how many likes we have, what other people is happening in their lives, instead of what Christ thinks about me. Paul had it right. I've not attained. I've got a lot to do. I think technology is literally destroying. I'm not going to tell you when the right time is for your child to own a phone. That's not my decision. You have to decide that. I think you are crazy if you have a phone and you don't have some type of protection on it. I think you're crazy. If you have a teenage daughter or son and they don't have protection on their phone, I think you are absolutely crazy, because the rates are 100%. Your child is looking at pornography, will look at pornography, or start down a road toward that 100%. Because it pops up on everything, and it is so unfair to our young people to have to see that and have to say no all the time. It's draining. There's a website you can go to about this Purity Plan. It's a good website. He has protection they set up. I think it'd be good for all adults. I think you ought to be on something. I think you ought to have the same passwords with a spouse. I think you ought to be so careful, because I think technology is destroying. Can you imagine this? Over the same period of time, there was a sharp spike in reports of students seeking help at college and university counseling centers, principally for depression and anxiety. The visits jumped up 30%. Colleges are having to hire more counselors ever since technology grew even more. Oh, friend, I just want us to be aware of it. Technology without boundaries will eventually take us to a place of no dependence upon God. Say, Pastor, it's not that extreme. Oh, it already is. I know I told you to go to Proverbs. We're going to have to jump past this one. Go to Psalms chapter 25. I understand this message is not popular. I get it. I understand there's not going to be a lot of amens. I get it, and you don't need to be. But I want you to see the importance here. Psalms chapter 25. Would you go there? Psalms chapter 25. Technology without boundaries will eventually take us to a place of a lack of dependence upon God. Psalms 25. Look at what David says here. I want you to see this with me. Unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. O my God, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. Yea, let none that wait on thee be what? Okay, don't let them be let down, because when you wait on God, you will not be let down. Let them be ashamed which transgress without cause. Those that sin, those that are doing those things, let those people come to shame. Look at verse 4. This is what David said. Show me thy ways, O Lord. Teach me thy what? Lead me in thy truth and teach me, for thou art the God of my salvation. On thee do I wait all the day. I'm going to give you 3 things in conclusion today of what technology does. It does not lead us to a point of confidence in God and trust in God. I'm not bashing your phone, I have one. I'm not bashing your computer, I have one. I'm not bashing your iPad, I have one. I'm not bashing your TV, I have one. I'm not telling you what you can and cannot do, but what I am telling you, you need to set up boundaries in your life to protect yourself, and if you're a dad in the home, have some protection for your family as well. Set it up, because it's very, very dangerous. I want you to see three things that technology does. Number one, it's a distraction. It's a distraction. Maybe you say, Pastor, I don't agree with everything you've said today, but I would at least agree technology is a distraction, right? Now, with that being said, we have become conditioned to distraction. I have to, at times, on purpose, because I have this thing and it'll ding and do all these things all the time, I have to set this. There are times I'm studying in my office and this thing dings. And somebody needs something, I got to go do something, I got to do this, that, and then something pops up, a notification. This person's having a birthday, this person's having this, and my mind gets distracted. I am now conditioned to be distracted. I am waiting for this thing to ding. I'm waiting for it to come. My mind is listening very intently. I'm waiting for it. Now, what happens when I'm walking with the Lord, I have to be very diligent. And I have to set this in another room or turn it completely on silent. No buzzing. I flip it over so I can't see it. I have to be very determined, because every time I read the Bible and try to pray without fail, this thing will go off. Every single time. I'll be praying for a few minutes, and man, me and God are getting alone, and I'm pouring out my heart to God, and I'm praying for people, and all of a sudden this thing will ding. You know what that does to my prayer time? It's hard to get back into prayer when you pick this up. It takes a little while. You understand, it is a distraction. Our distraction is often what goes to what is important. So in reality, our distraction becomes an idol. Yes, I said it. Your phone can become your idol. It can replace God, and in most people, it has. We care so much about what that silly phone says when God wants our undivided attention. Aaron Weisman, I don't know what background he is, but he's a professor somewhere. He made this statement. Phones are seemingly scratching the itch that should be satisfied by communion with God and fellowship with other believers. The heart's need for God is being eclipsed by the stimulating glow of a small screen. Tonight, when you're at home, I guarantee what most people are doing is either on TV, on their phones, or on a computer. Most homes in America are doing one of those three things. Is there anything wrong? No. I'll probably watch some baseball today. What's wrong with it? It's when it distracts us from what God would have us to do. It becomes a distraction. It becomes a distraction. You remember Mary and Martha? Martha was busy doing all this work, and Mary was sitting at the feet of Jesus. You know what technology is? It's being busy with all these other things when what's important is right in front of us, Jesus, the Son of God. And we neglect Him because we're distracted, because of a phone, because of what other people think. And you know what we leave there thinking? Oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to have this, I've got to be better, I've got to do this with myself, and I've got to be in line with the trends of the day, and I've got to make sure I'm looking nice, I got to do all these different, I got all this to do. Instead of, I got to get a hold of God today. David said, show me your paths. Number two, not only do we see distraction, number two, we see delusional thinking. We desire anything that will break reality of our mortality and or reality of the pain of life. I just want to escape it. I just want to get past the pain. So we use something that is temporary to temporarily fill the void, to distract us from the reality that's going on around us. Technology fills in that void. Who should fill that void? The cliche answer should be God. Right? That's too simple. That's too easy. So we get on our technology. Many people crave connection so much that they seek it from people they have never met. One will sit at home and watch TV or play on the phone rather than attend services for the Lord and then complain about depression. then complain that they're not walking with God, then complain that they don't know how to walk with God, then complain that God's not answering their prayer, then complain that they're struggling with this, then complain. There's nothing about God that is even in the situation or the formula. It's all about what is good for me. I have opportunities to grow in God. I could read my Bible. I could attend more church. I could tell other people. I could read some good books. I could find some good commentaries. But instead, I'm going to get on technology and I'm going to waste 4.5 hours of my day so I can have this delusional thinking. I can just escape what's really happening and I can just see how bad other people are. Oh, what a scary thing. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Isn't it nice sometimes to come across someone who's worse off than you? Right? Just be real. It's nice to know there's someone worse off than me out there. It makes me feel a little better. But what are we doing, friend? I'm not trying to bash. I think there's very good things with all that. But I'm saying, what are your boundaries? Somebody came to you and said, how could I set up boundaries in my home, my phone? How much time should you spend on a phone? Never let it get in the way of the Lord. That's for sure. That's for sure. Thirdly, and this is where we'll end, distraction, delusional thinking. Thirdly, we see disaster. This is from the National Library of Medicine. Obesity is at an all-time high, especially in children, and they go back to technology. Back pain is at an all-time high, and they base it on the way people sit in front of a device or with their phone. Depression is at an all-time high. Psychological trauma is at an all-time high. Sleep disturbances that lead to sickness. Such negative effects can have a major impact on our economy due to disability-adjusted life years, causing a burden to the family and society. I'm going to talk about this for like 2 minutes. Pornography exists on 12% of all websites and is viewed by approximately 69% of American men and 40% of American women in any given year. The support and public opinion for pornography in America is growing. Support of it. One reason for creation and circulation of pornography is the lucrative nature of this industry. In 2023, it matched the revenue of the NCAA at $1.15 billion. What do I mean? I mean technology is taking over our lives and we don't stop there. And then we look into something else. And then we look into something else. And then we look into something else. And it's no wonder our prisons are flooded. Our jails are flooded. The police can't keep up. You say, Pastor, what does it have to do with? I believe something major is technology. Technology. In 1953, there was those wicked magazines. Over 53,000 copies were sold in 1953. In 2019, 80,000 views on certain pornography websites per minute in 2019. Don't tell me technology is not having a hold. Don't you dare tell me that. Don't you tell me that I'm way off in left field. Don't you dare tell me that. I have to ride with kids and take people to school and ride around with people, and they say some of the worst stuff I have ever heard in my life. I grew up very sheltered. I hear more from people who have technology. Little children have access to this stuff, and they talk about what they're going to do to other children on the bus that's dirty and perverted, and you want to sit there and say technology is not an issue and I don't have a problem with it. I'm going to tell you this. You better evaluate your life. Maybe you're not into some of those things, but you better see how much time am I wasting on this device. It's not helping me grow closer to the Lord. It is actually becoming an idol in my life. When will the church say enough is enough? All we'll say is, well, I'm not doing those things. When will we say, I'm not drawing closer to God? This might be part of the problem. Maybe it'd be a good time to shut it off or get some accountability or not watch as much TV or not watch as much computer. Man, go do something productive. Maybe that's a good time to see there's some rough stuff going on. What can we do in closing? What can we do? We can formulate a plan. Be honest about it. Get a plan. Man, you're not into certain stuff, but you say, Pastor, I spend way too much time. Get an accountability partner. Man, find someone that you love and you care about. Say, you know what? I really honestly care too much about how I look on Facebook. I spend way too much time thinking about that stuff. I spend way too much time about other people's opinion. Pastor, I get depressed after I get on Facebook. Man, if some of you have complained to me, I don't like your post. I don't get on there very often. The only thing I want on Facebook is some of those funny videos with like the ducks dancing and stuff. That's all. Don't get offended. Man, that stuff drains me. I get on there for 20 minutes and this person is saying this and this person is saying that. I can't handle it. My spirit goes down. Saturdays, I can't get on that stuff unless I'm on Facebook Messenger messaging someone. It just drains my spirit. I can't get in the pulpit after looking at that stuff. It drains me. I formulate a plan. How can I enjoy technology and use it what it should? I formulate a plan. I'm going to be on technology 30 minutes a day. 30 minutes. You're not going to catch me 40, right? Get a plan. Get an accountability partner. Get an accountability partner. Husbands, wives, be there for each other. Go up to them and say, I'm wasting a lot of time on this thing. Would you help me? Help me. Next, complete honesty. Stop lying to God. God knows that your device has become a god to you. Be honest. There are all these things out there, cleaninternet.com, Purity Plan Ministries, you can read books. But first, understand we have a problem. Be honest with myself. Listen very closely. Give grace for digital failure. Give grace. Be there for one another. Set up time restrictions, man. Get some accountability. Think through how you are conversing with God. Does technology hinder your relationship with Him? I think we all ought to say danger, 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 and be very honest. Lord, help me to put you first and help me not to have these distractions. Head bows, eyes closed this morning.